and I'd like to call the official business portion of our meeting to order. I'll start by asking our administrative coordinator, Mitzi McDonald, just to confirm that we have quorum to continue.
Yes, we do.
Excellent. And with your consent, I'm honored to serve as your chair for the official business portion of the AGM. During this meeting, we will always try to work on a consensus basis. Our preferred way to approve agenda items is to see if there are any objections. In doing that, on the technical end, we will ask that you use the raise hand function in Zoom if you have questions, concerns, or objections. That will bring you to the attention of our very capable administrative coordinator, and we will then be able to hear what you have to say. If, when we have a motion that's been put forward and we see no hands, we will know that we have consent to accept that motion as passed, and we'll proceed from there. Ms. Erica Shardlow will serve as our minute taker, and I will serve as the timekeeper for this portion of the meeting. We're very happy that you're joining us, and let's continue the kickoff. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that this meeting and our work take place on the traditional unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And I want to take a moment to show our gratitude and respect for the Algonquin people who have inhabited and cared for these lands long before today. We also take this moment to embrace our responsibility to steward and respect this land for the benefit of all future generations. Now, a little more housekeeping before we get into the more substantive matters. We are recording this meeting to share the presentations and to help in note-taking for the AGM. We ask you to mute yourselves if you're, and to use the chat function for comments and questions. When there is a need for members to speak, please use the raise hand function and wait for the chair or whoever is speaking at that point to identify you, then unmute. We want to keep things organized. We have a large group, and we know that that can be difficult without having a specific procedure for people speaking. A word about membership. Members have the right to vote at this meeting. As described earlier, we will try to proceed by consent first. When matters come to a vote, we're going to make use of the polling functions of Zoom. So for those present who are not members, we will ask you to abstain from those votes simply by closing the poll. And to avoid confusion, I want to be very specific. Don't choose I'm asking for non-members not to choose the abstain option on any poll, but just to close it without a response. We welcome you as observers. We hope that you'll become members of CAFES for those who are not yet a member, but we do need to ensure that we're fair and consistent in counting the votes of our current members, and so this will allow us to do that. Brings us to the first motion for this AGM, and that is a motion to approve the minutes of last year's AGM. Those were circulated with the materials for this meeting. Are there any proposed amendments or questions with respect to the minutes? I see a raised hand from Letitia Charbonneau.
Sorry, my question is about organizational members. Do we get only one vote per organization?
So we would ask you to identify yourself as an organizational member. Please do so in the chat. That's going to allow our administrative assistants to identify you. As mentioned earlier, our preferred method of proceeding is via consent, but if we do have to make use of the polling functions, we're going to make use of the identification of organizational members that I've just asked you to do in the chat, in order to then have our administrative staff go through the voting and identify those people as being distinct from individual members because you represent an organization. And I hope that answers your question.
Well, there's more than one of us. There are quite a few of us of that organization here, but
okay. So if you have two people from your organization who are present, then we don't need to go through that process, because assuming that you're not also voting in a personal capacity as well. If you're voting in a personal capacity as well, then we do still need to go through that process. So I would ask you that you identify in the chat, I am voting for myself and such organization. That way we know.
Okay,
If it comes down to that, it's going to require a bit of time for our staff to go through those votes. But the hope is that we're not going to have anything that's so very, very close that we're going to need to get into that minutia. And of course, as I said at the outset, the hope is that we're going to be able to proceed by consent. So just turning back to the minutes, I don't see any questions or concerns with respect to the minutes. I'm going to ask Ms. Emma Bider if she's able to provide a second as I move this motion.
I second.
Thank you. I'll allow a moment for us to take a look, and seeing no hands arising, consider that motion passed. Having done that, I want to take a moment to introduce the current members of the board and to provide some thank yous to outgoing members. Ms. Magdalene Carson is our vice chair. She's a long-running member of CAFES and also provides the graphic design work that you have, I'm sure, seen on our posters, our presentations, and that really helps bring our work to life. I expect that you saw her work on the invitation for this very meeting. Mr. Nick Lepan is our treasurer and an officer of the corporation. He's leaving that role following the installation of the new board after this meeting. I want to take this opportunity to thank him for his seemingly boundless expertise and tremendous efforts. He's made a really significant contribution this year and he will be missed. Mary Hegan was the head of our board renewal committee this past year. She and Magdalene did a tremendous amount of work assembling the slate of candidates you're going to hear about later at this meeting. And Mary is also unfortunately leaving our board after this term. I want to thank her for her years of work and also for allowing us to make use of her great expertise and insight. Some of us do not have the depths of expertise that she has, and it's great to be able to draw on that. John Milton is another long-serving member of the board who is leaving us after this term, and I want to thank him for his unique rural and academic perspectives, for bringing his sense of humor to our meetings, and for all the work that he's done to connect cafes to students. Akil Mesawala is another long-serving member of the board. His term is coming up, but he is asking you to allow him to serve another term. And so I want to thank Akil for his green economy perspective, his hard work, and for wanting to keep devoting that hard work to cafes. And last, but certainly not least, is Emma Bider. She joined the board last year at the same time I did. She still has another year to run. And she has brought to us years of experience in the green NGO space. She's also soon to become Dr. Bider after she defends her PhD. You're going to hear from her later when she presents our 3-year strategic plan. I next want to introduce our staff. Erica Shardlow is our secretary for this meeting. She's also the staff for the Trees and Green Space Coordinator. She's done excellent work in that space, including recently her first CAFES public delegation to City Hall. Many of you will have had a chance to encounter Mitzi McDonald, our part-time administrator, in the context of the recent membership renewal. Mitzi joined us earlier this year. She's already proven her mettle on the team. I'm sure I've heard from her. I'm sure many of you have as well. And finally, of course, we want to thank Angela Keller-Herzog. It's my pleasure to tag Angela, our untiring executive director, who probably does not need any introduction to anyone here. But I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that much of the momentum of CAFES is fueled by Angela's energy for climate action, for pursuing environmental initiatives, for building new relationships and partnerships, and welcoming new members and voices into the CAFES network. And with that, I want to hand over to Angela to tell us how we did last year.
Okay. I just am working on finding my share screen button. Everything is a bit compressed on my screen. Okay, so I am, how about under more? share screen options. No, not the options. I'm sorry, guys. More share screen. There we go. And now I want to share screen number 2 and share. There we are. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. I think I heard somebody say yep. That's good. All right. So hello, everybody. So 2023 was an excellent year for CAFES, and it is a real pleasure for me to be able to present the annual report, which really is the impact report for CAFES. And we are going to be looking at the financial reporting in a little bit. So I'm going to focus on what we achieved. It was a year of further organizational development, and it was a year of, I think, having significant impact. I want to thank Erica Shardlow, who did a lot of the drafting of this report. It is available in your AGM materials in detail, and we will very soon also post it on the website, of course. So looking over who we are in 2023, our organizational membership was just short of 40 organizations. We found that in addition to community associations and environment committees of CAs, we have about a third of our organizational members now are citizens associations and environmental organizations. So that's a really nice balance. We were lucky to have a dynamic board in 2023 that later will present to you our new 3-year strategy. And we had staffing throughout, thanks in part to these eco-internship wage subsidies, so that we could afford to have a little bit more muscle. In community collaboration, the highlights of the year was for sure the climate resiliency community dialogues that involved hundreds of you. We had many of you working as facilitators. We had many of you partnering organizationally. We had 10 in-person workshops in rural, suburban, and urban parts of Ottawa, unpacking climate concerns as well as solutions at individual, community, and municipal level. And the reports, both individual workshops and the final report and the executive summary of that, is all available on the website. We ran a lot of CAFES caucuses. We had a couple for waste and circular economy. We had several climate caucuses. We had trees and green space caucuses, where we were sharing our concerns, our victories, our approaches, our questions, our experiences with each other, as we do in this network. And we also consulted with each other in terms of some of our advocacy positions vis-a-vis what's happening at the municipal level. And CAFES, if I may say so, was a well-serving, strong pillar of support to the People's Official Plan Coalition, with very regular attendance at those meetings and discussions. We had excellent partnership also with Carleton University. This year, our community engagement project took a focus on birds and bird window collisions. It was a really interesting project that all of you who showed up for the final workshop on that would attest was the case. And I know the students really appreciated the partnership. We continued to populate the community environment and climate calendar throughout the year with local events, so no fear of missing out. And this is also something which I think is helpful to the smaller initiatives and member organizations to get their events publicized. And we plan to continue providing that service. And you can also subscribe, so you don't have to go to the website to find it, but it'll be overlaid to your own calendar. We did a lot of work in trees, canopy regeneration projects. We had the Mother's Day backyard tree giveaway. In terms of city engagement, we are philosophically of this mind that if you measure it, you can manage it. And we took the city to task and continue to do so in terms of pursuing the 40% canopy target and to measure, including more frequently, because part of accountability at the city level is really if we get annual, at least updates, otherwise we can't hold a council accountable. And right now the urban tree canopy data is only coming in every maybe 6 years. In terms of waste reduction, we think that a 23% waste reduction ambition over 10 years is also really not good enough. Toronto is pitched it at 70%, and they're on track. They're measuring what they're doing and they're succeeding. So we could be being a lot more ambitious, and that'll be one of our main inputs on the solid waste management master plan, which will be coming to committee and council in probably June. In terms of the climate emissions also, we are now really, I think, making a fuss that we want to see the annual emissions reports for the city, both corporate and community. The city has failed to deliver so far the reports for 21 and 22. And as we would all agree that we are already in 2024. So come on, city. I need to probably go a little bit faster to catch up with our timing for the agenda. We made many public delegations to various city committee. Many of you guys stepped up and made public delegations where we would organize as a team, where the issues were important. And I thank you for that coordination and for stepping up. We are very happy that our advocacy in terms of climate lens on the capital budget, we made a breakthrough, or at least we think that we had something to do with it, as we've been pushing the city on that for a number of years. So the capital budget now has a little tool on it where there is an assessment whether a particular project will be mitigating or adding to fossil fuel emissions in the city. Our advocacy on infrastructure continues on the nature-based solutions, particularly tree trenches, trying to get the forestry people talking to stormwater people, not an easy thing in the city of Ottawa. And we're also almost ready to pop from the work of a working group, a short paper on trees and zoning. As many of you would know, that there's a comprehensive bylaw coming out. And just this morning, I saw the developer white paper on exactly that. They are saying we should permit the paving over front yards for parking. So that would be the front yard and the right of way, which is public space, paved over, no more trees. We are going to obviously take the position that one should not have the right to pave over the setback, the right of way, and to sort of privatize that public section of land that right now belongs to trees. Our paper is also quite metrics based. We took positions on the Taywin clear cutting, site alteration law, the gardening on the right of way, the Enbridge St. Laurent Boulevard pipeline. And also what is still very much in play is advocating for renewable energy and battery energy storage systems to have a place in Ottawa in our energy transition. And the last thing, a quick hurrah. I suspect that James Sabourin has left the meeting, but applauding the climate-related financial disclosures at the city level. It's not yet action, but again, the measurement is the first step towards action. I will leave it there. Again, there's also project activities. Yes, we'll be doing a pollinator plant sale again on May, I think it's May 25th at the Great Glebe Garage Sale. It's a Saturday. So you can pick up your herbs and pollinator plants and say hi there. And maybe, okay, the last thing I'll mention is we have a volunteer team working on climate misinformation. If you go to the project tab on the website, you can see that work to combat and counter some of the climate tropes that we are starting to encounter, including in the public dialogue spaces of the City of Ottawa. So bravo to that team and getting those briefs up. I'll stop there. And anyways, it's been a fantastic year. Thank you all for your support. We do now have an option for monthly donations. So if anyone is inspired about let's fuel this engine that is CAFES, all this action, networking, working groups, caucuses, we do need resources, so you can make a monthly donation now on our website, which was a request that I got and we have made happen now. So thank you everybody, and back to you, James.
Thank you very much, Angela. Inspiring stuff. And I'm going to ask for Mr. Nick LePen to step forward metaphorically, given that we're all online now, and to provide us his financial report for the year that was.
Thanks, James. Past year financially had some notable successes. We had some significant growth in revenues, and we exercised care on expenses. There was a modest net income, but there were also some significant challenges, and we made some progress in addressing those. The biggest challenge financially for CAFES continues to be obtaining as much sustainable core funding as we can. And we had some successes this year in getting some funding for our core operations, but that continues to be a focus of the board, of Angela volunteers. We've had a fundraising committee, and it's something that we need to, and we keep going at. And that's why that shows up, as Emma, I'm sure will mention, as one of the main priorities in the financial and strategic plan, because we want to be able to build the organization to have that kind of administrative support, ongoing capability, and all those good kind of things that we do both for members and our advocacy work that Angela has talked about. A couple of other things that occurred financially during the year before I get into the details of the financial results was a lot of work to upgrade financial processes at CAFES, working with Angela, with the administrative support person that we had for a large part of the year, and with our bookkeeping resources. And that paid off with the review engagement that we'll talk about shortly. Now I want to move to the 2023 financial results, and before getting into the individual results, there's an important technical aspect that we do need the members to receive a resolution on. CAFES is what is called a soliciting corporation under the legislation, the not-for-profit federal legislation that we are formed under. That means that we receive more than 10,000 in contributions or grants from public sources or organizations that are themselves soliciting corporations because they get public funding in one form or another. The Ottawa Community Foundation would be an example of that, for example, or organizations that are providing us wage subsidies. The fact that we're a soliciting corporation means that we need to appoint a public accountant. We are required to do so under the legislation, an accredited certified public accountant. And we either need to have a so-called review engagement of our financial results or a full audit. A review engagement is much simpler and less expensive. And we can choose to have a review engagement as long as our revenues are below $250,000 a year, which they are. So after a search that considered the suitability and cost, the board appointed Numeris CPA, which is an Ottawa-based public accountant, has experience with not-for-profits, to do a year-end review of CAFE's financial statements for 2023, and their opinion is included as part of the financial statements that were circulated to members before the meeting. Because of the significant work that had been done on financial processes, this review went as simply as could be expected for a first-time independent review of our financial statements. What we do need a formal resolution by members to ratify the decision by the board to appoint Numeris to do a review engagement for 2023. And that is in financial motion number 1 in the material that was distributed. Angela has screen shared that. And the motion is to be it resolved that members appoint Numeris CPA to be the public accountant of CAFES for the 2023 fiscal period to perform the review engagement with a remuneration of $3,000 plus HST. So I'll stop here and ask if there are any questions or comments about that motion before we go to formally moving it and seconding it. Are there any comments or questions about that motion? I'm hoping James and Angela, you can help me see. I don't see anybody.
I don't see anybody, but I will continue to look.
Yeah, we'll just wait a
through the
moment or
gallery of
two.
speakers in case there is someone who is raising their hand.
Okay. Seeing none, then I will formally
Wait.
move the motion. And I would.
Okay, I see
Sorry.
a hand up from Robert McCauley.
Oh, okay, Robert.
Just real quick, did you say that this work has already been done and you're looking for the approval to have had it done, or is it to be done?
No, the work was done at year end because we needed the review of the financial statements to be presented to this AGM. Ideally, we would have decided at a previous AGM to appoint a public accountant, but that was not done at the last AGM. So the board took a decision to appoint Numeris and to get a review engagement done, anticipating that that would be ratified, hoping that that would be ratified at this meeting. If the members chose, so the work has been done, it's the simple answer, and we're looking for a ratification of that decision. If the members decided not to ratify, for example, if the members decided, well, we really would like a full audit, not a review, the board would be obliged to go back and get additional audit work done. But the board at this point believes that the decision that it took was based on a good process to identify a suitable public accountant, and that a review engagement rather than a full audit was most appropriate for CAFES at this stage in its development. I hope that answers your question.
It does, Nick. Thanks very much. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no, that's great. Anybody else? Okay, so I'm moving that motion, James, and I believe Guy Dubuc, who is a member and is one of the people standing for election for the new board later in this meeting, is prepared to second it. Is that correct, Guy?
I second the motion.
Thank you. So, seeing no objections, James, I think we could
I'm
consider
also
that
seeing none.
that motion adopted. I will make a couple of other comments on the financial statements themselves. As I said earlier, revenues, if we go, Angela, to the profit and loss statement first. Thank you for going down to that. Revenues, as I said, are significantly increased from last year, roughly 140,000, 139,900 compared to 62,000. And revenues were up across many of the categories: increased grants, increased program revenues, a material contract with the city, increased membership revenue. Expenses, of course, were also up in part because we did more during the year, and also because we therefore hired additional staff during the year, including administrative staff, and we put in place a formal contract, so we were able to pay Angela for her oversight responsibilities and her activities related to programs and administration of the organization. I'll also note that these financial statements are prepared on what's called an accrual basis of accounting. So that means that we only count in our revenues amounts that we have earned in the year. So if we received payment under a grant or a contract for work that is to be done in 2024, we do not count the full payment that we receive in 2023 in 2023's revenue. It will be counted in 2024 as we've earned the money, the return as the work is done. Expenses, as I said, were administrative expenses. That line, about a third of the way from the bottom, are a higher proportion of our revenues than they were in 2022, and that's a number that we keep a clear eye on. There's several reasons why administrative expenses are a higher proportion of our revenues, partly because, as I said earlier, we did have a full-time administrator, and also because we conducted the review engagement that I referred to earlier for roughly $3,000. We did have a modest net income for the year, and that is what the board was largely targeting. Revenues for 2023 were pretty close to what was in our budgeted amounts. We were budgeting about 145,000, and we came in just at about 140. The same is true for expenses. We're pretty close to what we budgeted for 2023. I have a few comments on items on the balance sheet before we go to questions. On the balance sheet, that shows a point in time, our financial position as at the year end, December 31st of 2023. You'll see that we had significant cash in the bank at that point, 19,900. And that in part was because we had received payment for work that we had not yet fully done, and which would be counted, which would be in our revenues in 2024, and where we have not actually incurred all that significant costs in 2023. We had something like 13,000 of accounts receivable. These are amounts that we are owed but not yet received. They are from highly reputable sources, mostly wage subsidies that we've earned but haven't been paid yet, and we have no concerns about our ability to collect those amounts. But down in the liabilities section, you'll see something that says deferred grants. So that's what I was earlier talking about as an example, that those are amounts where we've been paid for by grantors for work to be done in 2024, and that shows up as amounts to be earned, and they will come in as revenue in 2024. We do have an excess of assets over liabilities, a small amount, a little over 9,700, but that means we are a viable organization at this point. But of course, as I said earlier, the more we can do to continue to increase sustainable core funding, the better off CAFES is going to be. The public accountant's report is included and forms part of the financial statements. If you had an opportunity to have a look at it, the main thing I want to say is that they do, of course, indicate that they did not perform a full audit, but they did review in some detail our financial operations and how we were accounting for things. And they express an opinion that there's nothing that came to their attention that tell them that we are not, that these statements are not a fair representation of our financial position. So it's a sort of double negative, which if you unpack gets us to a positive that they were pretty happy with the statements as they received them. So with that, James, I'd ask if there are any questions on the financial statements, either on anything I've said or on anything that anybody wants to ask on level of detail or any other points of question or comment before we go to a motion.
As noted before, if anyone has a question, I'd ask you to use the raise hand function. One of the nice things that does is bring you to the front of the line in the view, and then it's easy for us to identify you and hear your question. I see Brian Tansey has a raised hand.
Okay. So looking at the statement, Nick, I'm wondering, I know it's talking about 2023, but I'm wondering what's happening to Angela and whether or not she's getting paid. Obviously nowhere near what she's worth, but how's that working out in the 2023 year?
So we put in place, thank you, Brian, for the question. We put in place a formal contract with Angela, and she has been paid during 2023 as the projects that she's been involved in, as we receive payment for them and so forth. She is a contractor. She is not a formal employee, as many of our staff are contractors. So she is being paid regularly. Obviously, I won't speak, James, much more than I'm about to for the full board, but I think, Brian, many of us would love to and want to continue to find ways to make sure that Angela is as well fairly remunerated as possible going forward.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments on the financial statements? If not, thanks, James. We'll go to financial motion number 2. Financial motion number 2 is be it resolved that the members acknowledge receipt of the CAFES financial statements for 2023. I'm moving the motion, and Guy, I believe you're prepared to, you're prepared to second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or people who feel they want to contest the motion or have a problem with it? Seeing none, James, I think we could consider that motion also adopted.
Agreed, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you. So then there are 2 other motions for 2024 that relate to similar issues that for financial motion number 1. As CAFES is a soliciting corporation, the members need to appoint a public accountant. That's a requirement of the legislation for the 2024 fiscal period. That public accountant will do work on the 2024 financial statements at the beginning of 2025. And those would be part then of the financial statements that members will receive in the spring and the AGM of 2025. The board is recommending, and I as treasurer am recommending, that we reappoint Numeris CPA to be the public accountant. They are prepared to perform that role again. We were very happy with their attention, with the quality of people they put on the file, with the cost. It will be similar to, as we understand it, will be similar to what we paid for 2023. But the motion allows the board to agree to a remuneration with Numeris. But we believe that they now also benefit from knowing our operations somewhat, having done the first review engagement. And so we think they would be very suitable to continue as the public accountant of CAFES for 2024. So are there any questions about that? Maybe, do you want me, James, to also talk about resolution number 4 and then we move the 2 of them together?
I think that's worth doing, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you. So for resolution number 4 is separated. It's a special resolution, and this relates to the level of engagement that Numeris, assuming members appoint them, that the level of engagement that Numeris would conduct or that any other public accountant would conduct with respect to our financial statements for the 2024 year. We either have to have a so-called review engagement as we had this year or a full audit. And because of, for the reasons that I talked about for 2023, we believe those reasons still apply in 2024. It would be appropriate to have a review engagement, not a full audit. And so special resolution number 4, which requires 2/3 approval of the votes cast at the meeting, is a decision to have a review engagement rather than a full audit. And under the legislation, that's a decision that has to be put to the members. So are there any questions about financial resolution, special resolution number 4?
I'm
Nope.
not seeing any raised hands at
Not
this
seeing
time.
any raised hands? Nope, thank you. So I'm, James, prepared to move financial motion number 3 and financial special resolution number 4. And Guy, Dubuc again, I think Guy, you're prepared to second?
Yeah, I, Guy Dubuc, am seconding financial motion number 3 and special resolution number 4.
Thank you. So are there any who want to raise issues with either of these motions? Just wait a moment or two.
Seeing no raised hands myself.
I think we can consider those adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Back to you, and thank you to the members for their support of our ongoing financial success. And if you do have any thoughts about how we could fundraise, please speak to anybody. Email Angela. Email a member of the board. We always need help in thinking of ways that we can continue to get financial support for what we're succeeding in doing. Thanks again.
Thank you, Nick. Well, we'll move on to a couple of governance resolutions, and I will be the one presenting those. I'm going to ask Angela to share her screen so that we can see the resolutions that are being proposed, because they involve amendments to the Articles of Incorporation and to the bylaws. Now, these were circulated with materials in preparation for the AGM. I hope that everyone has had an opportunity to see them. I'll just wait for Angela to get the screen share before I carry on.
Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, Angela, and I think if you just hover and then click on the governance special resolution 1 there, then we should be able to get to.
Oh, you're seeing the wrong screen. Okay.
So it seems.
We try this again. Where is that? There it is. Okay, we want to share screen number 2.
Oh.
Better?
Joys of the multi-monitors, I think.
Oh, yes, I have 3.
All right, so this is Governance Special Resolution 1. It does require a 2/3 vote to pass. And this, I'll just read it out to you and then go through some of the logic. It's be it resolved that the members approve changing the Articles of Incorporation to provide for 2 classes of members, individuals and organizational, with 1 vote per individual member and 2 votes per organizational member, with the rights and obligations attached to each class of members otherwise being the same. Now, as was raised at the outset of this meeting, organizational members have 2 votes, individual members have 1 vote. Now, that's not currently reflected in the Articles of CAFES. And so we have, to date, been making use of a sort of a workaround whereby organizations would appoint 2 individuals who would then be the voting members who would vote on their behalf. But we want to get this down in a simpler fashion in black and white. And one of the advantages of having it put directly in the articles in this way is that it's then very clear who holds the 2 votes as the organizational member. It's the organization. So, for example, if the organization has an AGM date that's different than ours, and their representatives change, we don't have to worry about, okay, well, who's the representative now? Who's voting for this organization? It's the organization who holds the vote, or in fact, 2 votes. So this is not intended really to be a substantive change. I think we all have the expectation that this is the situation currently, but what we don't have is that reflected in a clear way in our Articles of Incorporation. So we are asking the membership for and the ability to put that in our articles of incorporation. Because it's an amendment to the articles of incorporation, it does require a special resolution requiring 2/3 of the vote. I saw a question pop up in the chat. Can an organizational rep also be an individual member? And so this again would help clarify that circumstance as well, just for practical purposes. It'll then be clear that the individual member holds their individual vote. And if they're representing an organization, it's the organization who's separate and has 2 votes. So that person might serve both functions, but then it's clear in black and white that there's actually 2 things happening there. So I hope that assists in answering Dan Harris' question that I saw pop up in the chat. I'm going to take a moment to invite anyone who wants to raise a hand and pose a further question to do so. See William Van Geest.
Yeah, thanks, James. I just want to make sure I'm actually not the representative of record for my organization, even though I am representing them this evening or was intending to. I just wanted to clarify, that's okay? Am I allowed to vote and everything?
So I would hope, so that's something that, again, it's the matter of that sort of the practicalities. I know Mitzi was kind enough to post in the chat earlier that there are representatives of record for our organizations. I would invite you to use the chat direct message function with Mitzi so that we can clarify whether we already have somebody present who's representing your organization. We don't want a situation where there's double counting if it comes to that, but I don't have that list directly in front of me. And so Mitzi's the person to ask with respect to that sort of practical question.
I mean, I know for a fact that I'm the only one representing my organization. I just want to be sure that I'm not, falling afoul of the Constitution.
No, that's much appreciated. I think we're all trying to ensure that this is all fair and clear. And so that's really why we're bringing forward these motions with respect to governance. One of the things that happened at last year's AGM was that the board was tasked with doing a bylaw review. And so these are really things that came out of that and are our attempt to make things much clearer, much more straightforward, and to address some of these practical issues that can arise. So I don't see any further hands being held up to ask some questions. I'm going to move that this motion be put to the membership. I believe that Emma Bider is prepared to second.
I am, and I do second.
Very good. And so given our desire to operate via consensus, we'll give a few moments now to see if any hands are raised in opposition. And seeing none, I take it that is passed with much more than the 2/3 majority needed. Thank you. And so, Angela, I'm going to ask you to move us on to governance resolution number 2, which includes a number of proposed bylaw amendments. Again, these are things which arose from the membership's direction to the board at the last AGM that we do a bylaw review. Again, these are materials that have been circulated in advance of the AGM. And in fact, if you look at Angela's shared screen, what you will see is proposed amendments, and not just the proposed amendments, but also the logic for the amendments is spelled out in the italics. And so largely what we're trying to do here is simplify some language and put in black and white what our current practices already are, for example. So these are things we're already doing in terms of, for instance, the conduct of an AGM each year. That's always been presumed, but it wasn't in fact in black and white in the bylaws until, well, it's still not until this is adopted. We have a collection of fees from members on an annual basis. Spelling of timeline of that is not in the bylaws as yet, but will be if this is adopted. The fact that those fees cannot be changed without the approval of the membership, that's something that we're seeking to put directly in the bylaws. And also more flexibility in terms of allowing for the ED position to be salaried in future. Our current bylaws do not permit that. So that's okay for Angela being a contractor. But if we were to find ourselves in a situation where it was more advantageous for Angela to become an employee, or if we had to have an interim ED who preferred that arrangement, we want to have that flexibility to be able to do so. And finally, something that came up quite specifically at last year's AGM was addressing conflicts of interest. And that's right down at the bottom of the proposed bylaws. And so we have tried to spell out quite clearly a mechanism whereby conflicts of interest are to be identified. And then the board, without the participation of the board member who has identified the conflict or who has been identified as having a conflict, will determine what the appropriate remedy is in the circumstances. So the logic there is in part that conflicts can come in all kinds of varieties, large, small, fairly trivial, quite, very, very significant. And so we want to be able to have the flexibility to address things appropriately in the given circumstance. I know that's a lot to take in. I thank Angela and our staff very much for sharing the proposed changes in the chat. I would invite everyone to go ahead and click on that link so that you can pull it up in front of yourself. And I'm going to invite, if there are any questions at this time, I'll invite people to raise their hands so that we can address those questions. Don't see any questions arising. And so I'm going to move that the proposed bylaw amendments be put to the membership for a vote. I think Ms. Bider again is prepared to second.
Yes, I second.
Right. So we'll take a moment again to see if there are any hands being raised in opposition to approving that the board make these amendments to the bylaws. Seeing no hands raised, consider that motion passed. All right. That gets us on to more interesting material than dry bylaws and articles. I'm going to invite Ms. Emma Bider to take us into the CAFES 3-year strategy for 2024 through 2027.
Thank you, James. And again, thank you for Angela serving as our essentially Zoom slide support person. She's going to get a deck up about our 3-year strategy, which I am really pleased to be sharing with you all this evening. Oh, there we go. Fabulous. Thank you, Angela. So this is a plan that the board started brainstorming in August of 2023. We had a strategic retreat in beautiful Burritts Rapids, where we talked not only about where we thought CAFES could and should be in 3 years, but why we felt it was really important to create this plan now. 2023 was an unprecedented year in terms of climate change impacts. We saw all kinds of heat records broken, In Ottawa, we experienced wildfire smoke for the first time, I think, ever. A series of tornadoes over the summer caused some damage and now threaten to become the norm in the city. Climate change is here, and we've all been saying this for a while now. But for the first time, many of us in Ottawa really felt its impacts at a personal level. And unfortunately, 2024 looks to be no different. And this is, of course, scary, but it also demands a strong response. We're also in a moment of increased populism and polarization after the devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic. CAFES has always been a network, and we feel that connection, community, and collective action has never been more important. We need each other, not only to stave off fear and hopelessness, but in order to bring about the advocacy-based solutions that are rooted in the diverse needs of Ottawa residents, from Burris Rapids to Carp to Orleans and Centertown, that we desperately require to get us out of this situation. So we are so pleased to share these strategic priorities with you today, and I hope you'll see it as an invitation to join us as we work to ensure that Ottawa pursues this ambitious climate action we all know it can, and to continue participating in this robust community of climate advocates that are working so hard to make this happen. Oh, we're on CAFES tomorrow, but which is great. But I'll ask Angela if you wouldn't mind going back to I think slide number 2, yes. Thank you. I mentioned we were in Burris Rapids. We'll bring you back into that place. We had a good day of discussion. We built off our existing mission, which you should see before you now. And Angela, if you could go to the next slide. We also built off our mandate. We use them as starting points and asked ourselves to imagine CAFES in 3 years and ask what is the most important thing that CAFES can achieve in those 3 years. Next slide, please. So after that brainstorming session for about 3 months, our 2023 board chair, John Sobel, who really did a great deal of work on this, we really are thankful for his efforts. He took our ideas and he worked with Angela to really get into the weeds, establish where we are now, where we want to go, and make all of those ideas cohere. The next slide, please. We then brought a draft of these strategic priorities of this plan to a group of member organizations in December of 2023 to get some feedback from them about the plan. Does it make sense? Does it serve their needs? After all, we have never done this before. And so we took advantage of the amazing institutional knowledge of our organizational members. And just want to thank you all again for your efforts. We thought this was an incredibly productive discussion. It also helped us think about concrete next steps in terms of implementing the plan and its scope. Some of the things that came up, for example, were questions about, should CAFES extend our focus on policymakers at the NCC, in addition to our work with City Council. Other questions were things like, should CAFES think about a name change that better reflects the makeup of our membership? These are the types of questions that we will feed into implementing the strat plan. And certainly, for example, might be part of other plans that feed into the strategic plan, like a communications plan. From our perspective, we thought this event was a great success. It was really pleasing and really helpful to get tons of engagement, and felt that was a really important step to making sure that our plan and our priorities were in the right place. Next slide, please. So the board met on March 2nd and approved the following strategic priorities, which I will read the bold parts now and read them slowly so that you all have the opportunity to read the unbolded parts if you wish. So strategic priority number 1, grow CAFES network of local environmental leaders. 2, embolden municipal politicians and policymakers to make environmentally sound decisions. And 3, build CAFES organizational resilience and capacity. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about why these priorities are the ones we chose and why we thought they were important. Next slide, please. So, as we all know, it takes a lot of work to push for sound environmental policy. We would not be able to do it without the enthusiasm and passion of our members and volunteers. We feel it's critical that we continue to connect with community associations, other environmental groups, and other types of groups, as well as individuals across the city, so that cafes can represent geographic and demographic diversity of Ottawa. We really feel like there is untapped knowledge, expertise, and perspectives out there still that can and should be part of cafes to share their needs and desires for a clean and healthy environment. And, you know, we saw in our fabulous keynote, so much conversation going on in the chat. We want more of that. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's not that we only just want more voices at the table. We also believe in that it's really important now to build community. You know, it's part of resilience building, but it also helps us all feel less alone in this fight, and it enables resource and knowledge sharing. It creates better ideas. We need the energy that you get when you bring a bunch of passionate, curious people together. We all need that momentum and that community building. And we think we want cafes to be the forum to help create and grow that. Next slide, please. Obviously, network is at the core of what we do. That's why it's our first priority. It also feeds into the second. We're really proud of our advocacy at City Hall. Cafes is now seen as a trusted source of information at Council. What we want to do now is more effectively bridge that trust so that we can help inform members about Council decisions and how they will affect our members, and then also more effectively bring our members' concerns to Council. Now, this is a high-level priority, keep in mind. I'm sure you all have lots of ideas about how to implement this particular priority, but the broader goal is that in doing this, we can help normalize science-based environmental dialogue. You know, it's not just for the tree huggers anymore, it's common sense, it's environmental policy that is reflected across the budget, and it's understood as important and necessary in urban, rural, and suburban communities. And that these types of environmental dialogues that become normal, everyday things, happen not only at City Hall, but also between communities within them, in addition to with our councillors. And I'm pleased to say that this is one of these things that we're already building on. We started doing this kind of work. March 4th, for example, we had a great workshop called The Grid Explained in Kinburn, where community members came and talked with a panel of experts. And they got to really learn about our energy grid and talk with each other and talk with council, their council member, about what that means for them in the future as we try to make our grid more resilient. Next slide, please. So the last priority has already been alluded to. We know, you all know, that Angela is an absolute powerhouse. All that she does continues to amaze me. Now, imagine, if you will, what she could do with a consistent staff, with core funding and an expanded board, as well as a salary. For one, cafes could offer all of you a lot more in terms of services, making sure that you get more out of your membership. But in addition, this priority will also hopefully meet the goal of reducing our risk. So that we're not reliant on a few funding pots, but actually be making money through a variety of revenue streams, and ensuring that we have consistent support and salary for Angela. I'm not going to dwell too much more on this, why this one is important. I think anyone who is part of an organization of this nature knows how difficult it is to maintain that kind of funding. I'll just say that we want to be here for a long time, and we want to build a legacy of climate advocacy in Ottawa. Ideally, or the dream is that cafes is an institution that community associations, environmental groups, and other groups, individuals can rely on as one of the voices of climate action in Ottawa. Next slide, please. So what does cafes look like in 3 years, in 3 succinct paragraphs? In 3 years, cafes will have larger, well-resourced staff, and will be able to support a truly diverse and representative citywide network of local environmental leaders implementing community-based initiatives with tangible local benefits. Cafes caucuses and other programs will have grown in size in 3 years, in scope and reach, gaining influence across Ottawa and at City Hall as critically important platforms for civic engagement education, and innovation. And in 3 years, CAFE's effective advocacy activities will have emboldened City Hall to make more environmentally sound municipal policy decisions that position Ottawa as a national leader in evidence-based urban environmental policy. So that's our dream. Thank you so much for listening. And I think I will turn it back to James to facilitate a question and answer.
Thank you very much, Emma. So this is the part of the AGM where we get to hear from the membership. I'm to ask you, as I did at the outset, if you want to ask a question, if you want to give us a comment, if you want to give us some ideas, because we do very much draw on our membership for all of those things, please raise your hand. We will get to you, and I will try to direct your question, concern, comment, idea to the right person. Mr. Van Geest.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to follow up on that. I don't know if it was a hypothetical or, an idea considered about connecting in a more meaningful way with the NCC. Where did that discussion go?
I'm going to suggest that Angela is probably best positioned to address that question.
So I think that at the level of implementation, where we're talking about outcomes, as we're driving for a particular outcomes, we can work more with the NCC. And right now, as you know, William, CAFES pretty much exclusively concentrates on the city council, the city committees. Our partner organization, FCF, Forêt Capital Forest, they have a very good working relationship with the NCC for some of their area plants that are then supported by communities in terms of nurturing and taking care of the trees after they're planted. So we definitely have, like, through our membership, ways in and connections. But if, for example, we're working to increase the canopy, it totally stands to reason that we should be working also with the NCC in terms of their strategic plan and nudging them forward. I think, interestingly enough, another big player that comes up quite a bit is Hydro Ottawa, and to a lesser extent Hydro One, who is a local distribution company for some of the rural areas. And when it comes to climate action and the energy transition and energy resiliency, it stands to reason that we should also be working with those centers of gravity. And then also just put forward the general idea that the City of Ottawa, Hydro One, and the NCC, depending on what the topic is, that they really should be not fighting each other, but working together to serve residents better and to get towards the outcomes that we want.
Thank you.
I see Teresa Peluso, I believe, is next.
Yeah. I just had a question about how to sort of, come up with new ideas. I think your strategy looks really good. If a member has an idea of something to do, is there some kind of a suggestion box or something where we could put our ideas and somebody could go through them? I mean, some of them might be sort of really off the wall or whatever, but others might, or you might find that there's a number of suggestions that kind of all belong together. And then you think, oh, we could go somewhere with this and just see how that goes. So just something, like you might be sort of doing something around the house and think, wouldn't it be great if? So if there's some way to you think about it and you think, yeah, this could really work. How to give it legs, and if CAFES would have a way to do that.
Well, I quite like that idea. I mean, we do have dialogue through message boards. We have one can always reach out via email to us.
Okay.
But I'm wondering, Angela, if you have any thoughts on perhaps a more formalized ideas process.
Okay, so I'm a pretty transparent person. So just now when I was starting to chuckle, I was thinking, oh yeah, the inbox, that's like Angela's email inbox. And it's definitely like overloaded. But I do try. And I love ideas, and I definitely have like a core belief that by working together and brainstorming and trying out ideas on each other, that is like a really important way forward. And sometimes I think the ideas can be genius, and sometimes we think they're genius, but we need someone else to tell us that, well, we maybe should learn from the experience of so and so who tried a similar thing. I think that our caucuses, right, where we bring together a whole bunch of like-minded people, maybe once we bounce our genius idea off one or two people, we can then bring it also to the caucus. If we think our idea has legs, and we want to involve a whole bunch of others, because alone we can do so much, and then together as a small group of people, we can do a lot more. So I think that in some ways CAFES is kind of ideally suited for that. One definite area for improvement that I'm hoping we will get to in 2024 is we have a functionality of a members forum on our website and connected to our like info tech setup. And we haven't spent very much time on really making that work, structuring it more. Some people complain they get too much email, other people don't like get enough discussion. So it's gonna take some like management to really look at how we structure that. Do we do some closed discussion group? We're starting to experiment whether the climate misinformation team wants to have its closed room, so that again, as they're sharing resources, they're not cluttering up everybody else's email. That a lot of that is actually kind of tricky to really make it work ideally. But we're hopefully gonna find some time to make the forum, which is the CAFES members discussion spaces, become more structured and work better. And then I guess if our main thematic caucuses are the trees, climate, and waste. So if you have ideas that fall outside of those, for sure, just give me a call, send me an email, and let's talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, I mean, I know you do a huge amount, but if there's some other way, like rather than have all these ideas pop into your already crowded email box, if there's a box where you can just put them, and then once a week, or you or somebody else could kind of go through and just see how they are. Like I would certainly not expect you to respond immediately, but just to have that there, and see what someone else thinks. So anyway, I think that's great. So and the forum sounds good, but
Yeah.
I think also sometimes an idea doesn't really fall into any one of the caucuses. So just have some way that people can send it off and see what happens, but not all on you. Like maybe there's some other way to manage it.
Okay, I think that the forum is probably the best place. Sometimes when people try to do is for discussions, they create what's called like the parking lot, right? Which means like the flip chart in the corner that like, after the meeting kind of goes into file 13. I think that like I love ideas, and I really have a deep-seated belief that we can create the environment that we and shape the environment that we live in. And ideas are the initial energy that helps us do that. So I love that attitude and that philosophy, Teresa.
I'll just add that I think this is sort of the core beauty of CAFES as an organization is sometimes you have, hey, I have this idea that I think is good, but not all the way there. And someone else can tack on, oh, you're just missing this piece. That'll totally work if, and, our caucuses, our ability to draw together different organizations. Hey, we tried that, but it didn't quite work. Here was the problem that we ran into, all that kind of stuff. Frankly, that's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question I see is from Mike Fletcher.
Great, thank you. I just want to comment a couple things. One is, we had a great session on battery energy storage systems in West Carleton. I think what's coming next very soon will be a procurement of renewables. And so the issue will go from being batteries to being wind and solar power. And I think we may see something next month, which is like in 5 days. So just putting that out there. And the discussion about Hydro Ottawa, I think, they're starting to work on a 5-year rate application, which is a big influence point for an electrical distribution company. And I think they'll be looking for input until about July on that rate application. So something to think about. Just a couple thoughts there.
Next hand I saw up, though it's now down, was from Ada Wara. Ada, do you have a question?
I did have a question, but I changed my mind. I was going to propose, Angela, I'm a big fan. Thank you so much for all the wonderful work you do for Ottawa. For the strategy, I was wondering whether you might want to add a couple of outcome indicators, just 2 or 3, so you can measure the progress you're making. It's a strategy. We're calling it strategy, and it's a strategy. You want to know how far you're advancing.
I think that is a piece that is a really logical piece, especially if we espouse a philosophy that values metrics and measurement. So I think that would be a good thing for the new incoming board to take a very specific interest in. Yes.
Next person I know has a question, though they've indicated to me through the chat they weren't able to raise their hand, is Gautam Shaw. Able to unmute and pose a question.
Sorry, my raised hand is somehow not working. My apologies. I just became a member recently, and thank you for doing a wonderful work and really appreciate it. And I hope I will be able to contribute some. So listening to what Teresa was saying and some other chat messages, a couple of things that I want to mention, rather more like a question, is one is like from this focus point of views, like are there any committees that, rather than like overwhelming Angela with all the questions and everything, are there any committees that the strategic plan is willing to create, so that you have individuals that can run with those kind of committees and focused on those, rather than having like a one point of contact and then trying to find ways to deal with them? That's one. And the second one is like, as you must have seen, also in the chat message that, I'm also I go to a part of Ecology Ottawa. So are there kind of overlaps, and how can we build the synergies so that we have like a one voice in the city rather than having multiple voices and then somehow like running into some kind of overlaps or perceived overlaps.
Thank you very much for the question. I think Angela has addressed, I'll give her a chance to address this further, but I think she's addressed your first question a little bit in speaking about our caucuses. I mean, we have our tree caucus, our waste management caucus, our circular economy caucus. So we certainly have member groups that have more narrow focuses. But in terms of the creation of subcommittees or what have you, I mean, I'm open to, I'll provide you in the chat with some contact information for me. I'm certainly open to hearing from you in terms of what your areas of interest are and what you might be able to contribute in terms of things that the board can make use of. And I think we can always try to find folks a home. It's a big network and there's a lot of work to be done.
Definitely. No, thank you. Appreciate it.
So, Angela?
Yeah, if I can comment on that. So at two different levels, right? So on the board, the 2023 board had several committees. So there was the board renewal committee, which was chaired by Mary Hegan, and which was a very useful committee to get us rolling in terms of sort of the sustainability of the energy on the board and trying to get better diversity. In terms of more at the operational level, right now, yes, we have the caucuses where members can especially like learn from each other, catalyze each other, and so forth. And we have two working groups right now. There is the climate misinformation working group, and then there is a group which I think it require like it's kind of ready to go, but needs more engagement leadership, which is for the renewable energy stuff, which as Mike Fletcher, thank you, Mike, pointed out, is sort of a pot that is almost boiling over very soon. So the ISO is going to be doing a procurement for renewable energy, and at the same time, the city is supposed to be coming up with planning and zoning for renewable energy facilities. And right now, much to our shock, last July, there was a sudden motion coming like out of the bushes, saying that while we don't have those details worked out, we're going to make renewable energy facilities and battery energy storage system installations illegal, as in not permitted in any zone. So right now, Ottawa has a ban for renewable energy, which like basically, I mean, we haven't framed it that way, but that's the reality, and it's kind of shocking. So we do have a group of about 30 people that we know are very interested and variously also technically quite literate about renewable energy stuff. So there's definitely room, Gautam, for like that group. Now, the thing is, for a group of people that are interested in something to then actually become like structured and organized and do things, that does take organizing and leadership. But we are playing in terms of our structuring with sort of a working group model. And the workshop that a couple of people have mentioned now, I also had like a really excellent organizing set of volunteers to put together the workshop. So we're trying to do this structuring. If you're interested in some leadership and organizing, then let's talk.
Definitely. And I can just tell you quickly that I just won the fight with Hydro One on the battery. So I am putting that in my house, and they have, yep. So it was a long fight. So, but I have so far I have won it.
Congratulations.
But yeah, so and then there's definitely different fights, the environmental related fights, and especially cutting trees and all that kind of thing. So which is again, so I'm looking for avenue definitely, and I'm ready to help. And it's the more voice that we can create, a stronger voice we can create. That's what I'm looking for, so that this city does not feel that, oh, we have all these joint voices, and then they can continue to divide and rule kind of thing.
Now, the second question that you asked was concerning the relationship of CAFES and Ecology Ottawa. And
Yes.
I would also be very happy to hear from William Van Geest, who's here from Ecology Ottawa. I should tell you that we consider ourselves, I think, sister organizations. And I have very frequent contact with various staff, and Alice Irene, of course. I certainly tried to help in the current staffing process at Ecology Ottawa in terms of providing ideas of people that they might headhunt as they transition to have a new executive director. So in general, the idea is that we are sister organizations, that there is complementarity, that we work closely together. I think the last time that CAFES and Ecology Ottawa really had a difference of opinion and kind of contradicted each other goes back about maybe 8-9 years, where we were talking about complete streets, and Ecology Ottawa had a strong mandate leadership on active transportation things. And CAFES was saying well, yeah, but a complete street should also include trees. You shouldn't just be talking about buses and pedestrians and cars, but hello, can we have trees on that map as well? And that intervention was not appreciated by Ecology Ottawa, but I think that they've forgiven us. So I think that William is actually one of my favorite people. And I think it's not an exaggeration to say that we're in touch, I would say, almost once a day, William.
Wonderful, wonderful. No, I just wanted to make sure that we have this the joint kind of strength, right? And whereas one of the things that I have taken up is trying to get the city to listen to me on the environment side. And I have been going to media, I have been going doing my part, going to councillors, going to city managers. However, I think this is something that needs much more involvement, much more kind of concerted effort, right? From organizations like CAFES definitely, and Ecology Ottawa and all, so that we get to see some policies coming out from the city that helps continue to be a climate resilient and help us adapt, right?
William,
well, thank you.
Would you like to add to that?
Sure, I'll try to be brief. I think there's at least 3 ways that we, specifically Ecology Ottawa and CAFES, connect. One is informally, like Angela says, that, there's a lot of natural overlap and we touch base on a regular basis that way. But then also the People's Official Plan Coalition that came up earlier. And that's I think getting at the spirit of your question, Gutam, that, how do we ensure across the advocacy ecosystem that we're not duplicating efforts? And that's a fantastic forum in which to do that and to divide and conquer, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's with organizations that are not only ecology, social justice of a variety of types, housing, you name it. And then the third way is through kind of ad hoc working groups. When, for example, there's a official document, say a master plan or something like that, that comes up, or an issue, say, like the right-of-way stewardship issue last summer, we're getting pretty quick, or the fossil fuel promotion ban, we're getting pretty quick at kind of springing into action with interested groups, those who are available, and having those discussions and making a strategy and implementing it. So I personally am really encouraged by how that's going across our partners. And CAFES, I mean, sister organization is the exact term that I myself use for our relationship with CAFES, and it's a lovely siblinghood.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
I turn to Sarah McCarty, who has a question.
Yes, in terms of bringing ideas to Angela, I will say that if you bring ideas and capacity, she's very supportive of helping channel and shaping it to be effective. And we've been going along strong with the climate misinformation team, and we're gaining momentum and structure, and it's starting to increase the potential for impact, which is wonderful. My question or comment related to the strategic plan, and I'm not sure how it fits. So I live in Trend, Arlington, near Green Bank and Hunt Club. I used to live in Peterborough, and I could kind of like I could bump into like NGOs everywhere and get integrated into these community associations very easily. Like, I loved it. I moved to Ottawa, my first time in a big city, Green Bank and Hunt Club area. And I'll be honest, I only found Ecology Ottawa and CAFES through a conscious effort of Google searching like 1 year ago. And from my interactions and going into workshops for the first time and realizing that this network actually exists, because I'm like, it must be here. It seems very centralized to me. And I don't know how this fits, but I don't know, it seems like it's geographically centralized, these activities, and not distributed very well outside the center. I don't know, that's just been my personal experience, and it really feels to me like there needs to be more of a conscious effort to move beyond the center of the city with these initiatives and engage a broader geography. And I mean, moving into the rural area is a whole other kit and caboodle, but even getting into, Nepean and Canada, it doesn't seem like participation and awareness is broadly distributed outside the center. Anyways, personal observation.
I'll invite Angela to give some comments, but I think one thing that I will say from a board level is that, and you'll hear about this when we present the slate, or when Mary Hegan presents the slate of candidates for next year's board, we've made a very conscious effort to try to get board representation from a diverse geography, because the reality of Ottawa is that it is a very sort of spread out city with a lot of different aspects to it. I mean, I live in Lindenley. I'm near sort of New Edinburgh, Rockcliffe Park, that kind of area. It's very different from where you live, Sarah, and it's different in turn from Nepean, Canada, Orleans. I mean, all the way down to Burritts Rapids, Navan, the more rural type locations. And so we are very much trying to pull board members from all of these different places so that we have a footprint and we have, a brain who's thinking about the issues that are relevant to those places. So we're not, I think we're very much aware of this issue and the reality that for this particular municipality, it's hard because it's not very uniform. Do you have any comments to add, Angela?
Yes, I do. I mean, I always have comments to add. So this is, anyway, but thank you for inviting them. So I'm going to use the word zeitgeist, which is a German word. Like, it means kind of like the pulse of the time, spirit of the times. And there are some times when the zeitgeist is such that people are just like on a particular issue, and like you do a little bit of outreach and people kind of come. And when, for example, the community was concerned about the Syrian refugee crisis, that was very much in that zeitgeist, and people just came together. There's a lot of community social fabric that got built in that time, also between church communities and social justice communities. And that was that time. My feeling is that right now we're at a time when the like climate is not as zeitgeist uprise a thing as it was in, say, 2019, right? When Greta Thunberg was mobilizing millions into the streets, including in Ottawa, demonstrating that we can have 10, 15,000 people in the streets of Ottawa for climate. So the way that I'm feeling like our organizing and our building is much more like intentional and one by one by one by one. I know many of the people in this meeting, and I thank you all for staying till this hour. And I'm glad, like I thought we'd probably be about 15 people by now, but we're actually, I think, 4 computer screens of Zoom call on my computer. So I think we need intentionally to build in Barrhaven and in Trent Arlington and in Orleans. And we need to figure out who are our 5, 6 people and put them together and help them grow, help them with a local initiative. And in some cases, if the community associations are not really solid or vibrant, maybe we need to look further. Maybe we need to look at the Rotary clubs and the Kiwanis and see if they have environment Greenpoint people that would like to have an environment committee. We now have 2 faith community based members and the environment committee that leans against that. So structurally there's an idea in CAFES that we're working with existing social and community institutions. And I think that you're 100% spot on, Sarah, that we have to build out into Nepean, into the suburbs and into the rural areas. And part of that is also very, very tactical. If you can have constituents call the councillor and they're not from like somewhere across town or downtown, but they're from that ward, the councillor's assistant will schedule the meeting, will take the call, will bother to listen. Whereas if, you know, a bunch of social climate justice organizations are sending like, you know, campaigns, they don't listen to that as much. So if we can have people in every single ward that get the issues, that have had conversations to kind of figure out how that works in their neighborhood, have their own position, and then go to see their counselor, I think that that is worth gold.
Thank you.
Matt, I'm going to encourage folks to continue to use the chat to interact with one another and to pose questions, but we do need to move on through our agenda to our next item. I am going to turn over to outgoing board member Mary Hegan, who was the chair of our board renewal committee, and she will be conducting the election tonight. We need to have you unmute yourself, Mary. There we are.
Yes, thanks, James, and thanks to everybody for hanging in. And I've just been absolutely fascinated by this discussion coming out of our new strategic plan. And so next year is our opportunity to implement it in so many different ways. And a lot of you have touched on some great ideas. So this exciting year coming up. So icing on the cake for this business meeting is electing our new board. So I want to tell you that the board has had a renewal board committee going for quite a few months. And we've just talked a lot about having diversity in terms of geography, age, interests, different kinds of organizations, and we really wanted to have a board that reflected some of that in its representation. Ideally, the board was looking forward to filling 11 vacancies to have an active hands-on board. Tonight, we're very pleased to present to you a slate. I think you got a notice of that in your package of materials of 9 people. And why we decided to take a slate approach is to try to get that range of representation to move us all forward. So we have 9 people. We're very pleased to put to you in a minute for your vote. 3 of them are members who are filling out the second year of their term, and they've been on the existing board. So there's James Stevenson, Magdalene Carson, and Emma Bider. They're going to bring that experience to the new with new board members. There's Akil, who's going to stand for re-election for another 2-year term, and he's from the existing board. There's a few of us that are retiring, but I can say for myself, I'm not retiring from CAFES. I'm just having more time to do other things. So I hope to see you in caucuses and working groups, etc. So also we have 5 new members. And I have to tell you that we went through quite an extensive process of asking people to express interest to sit on our board. We've got their bios. We've been able to have very interesting conversations with them, resumes, the whole shebang. And they do bring that diversity that we need. So I want to quickly spend a bit of time on the new candidates for our board that you see before you. And going alphabetically here, I'm going to ask each to just say their name, the area of the city they're from, and what one thing that motivates them to be on our boards. So Guy Dubuc, I will start with you. Guy.
Sure. I've been working, well, I'm in Trendarlington. Sarah and I have worked together on the climate disinformation working group. I have been doing a number of different projects with CAFES over the past year and a bit. And the short answer is you can't say no to Angela. And anytime she needs help, I'm more than happy to oblige. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Secondly, Jennifer Goudreau. Jennifer.
Thanks, Mary. I'm in the Bel Air Community Association area. I'm near Algonquin College. And I think that we can only tackle the climate crisis through an increasing collaboration in our neighbors and our communities. That's why I want to get involved with the board.
Right. Elisa Odell. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Odell. I live outside Richmond Village in Ward 21. I'm really interested in joining the board. I'm a communications strategy specialist, so I'm excited about the prospect of working on a communications plan to support the new strategy, especially because I'm all about building bridges through impactful communication. I'm also a new farmer, and I'm interested in supporting ways to strengthen dialogue between rural and urban communities, given I used to live in the downtown core. So really pleased to be here. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome. Pamela O'Donnell.
Hi, Pamela O'Donnell. I live in Carlsbad Springs. I'm motivated to be here after seeing what happened with the clear cutting in the area and disgusted by City Hall's response. Frustrated by general backsliding on the environment that I see, but also inspired by all the action that is taking place. So I want to be part of that action. Thanks.
We'll promise lots of action. And Arella Ritter Guba. Arella.
Hi everyone, my name is Ariella. I'm located in Westboro and I'm in my 3rd year studying environmental science at Carleton, and my hope for becoming a CAFES board member is to work with businesses in sustainability practices and engaging the community in environmental activities. Thank you.
And last but not least, and he was a member of the board renewal committee along with Madeline Carson, is Akil. Akil, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be part of this board. It is hard to say no to Angela, and that's why I want to stay back. I'm learning so much from her leadership, and I think she's pulling together really good, strong working board, and together we can move CAFES to the next level. And yeah, that's why I'd love to stay back, learn more from the great leader we have.
And we still have 2 vacancies on the board, and so with the new board, they can fill vacancies during the year, and they're really hoping to maybe get some individuals from Canada and Orleans from our suburban area to round out the nature of the board. So that's your new board, and I'm very pleased to present it to you. And I should say, I should put a motion forward. I don't know whether you're going to put this up on the screen or not, Angela. But this is the motion for us to vote on. I so move that it be resolved that this slate and the term structure of directors be approved by the membership as the new board of directors for CAFES. And B, that the slated directors hereby elected shall determine amongst themselves within the next 14 days to fill the offices of the board, which is the chair, the vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. And thirdly, that the standing committee on board renewal shall endeavor to fill the 2 unfilled seats, preferably with suburban candidates or candidates otherwise filling gaps in the board governance experience, representation, and expertise on the board. I'm pleased to move that motion, and I ask for a seconder.
I'm happy to second, Mary. Thank you.
I think is Magdalene Carson going to second?
She's raising her hand. I can see her on screen.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I asked for your consent. And I also welcome anybody who wants to put their hand up to ask questions or to give any other suggestions. I don't think I see any other hands up. So I can say that this is your new board approved by consensus. Terrific.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone. That's the last substantive item of the night, and we are just about on time. By way of closing comments, I just want to say I joined CAFES about a year ago. I joined because I was very concerned with the state of the climate, with the state of the environment. I have 2 young kids. I have twins. They're 4 now. And I was worried, quite frankly, about the world that they were going to grow up in. But I'm also a person who, like many of you I've come to know, is not prepared to just throw my hands in the air, but rather is prepared to be stubborn about this and do the work and chip away at government and try to make a difference. And I think, as Angela alluded to earlier this evening, Sometimes the zeitgeist is there and we can seize it. And I think the work of organizations such as ours is in the times when the zeitgeist is not there for us to seize, to nonetheless keep tilling the soil and planting the seeds so that when our moment is ready, we are there and we have the right ideas and we have the right organizations and we're ready to spring into action. And so I'm very proud to be a part of this organization. I'm very proud to know all of you, and I very much appreciate your coming out tonight. Thank you very much. With that, that concludes our AGM.
Yay.
Yay.